Hi guys, I hope everyone's having a beautiful day today. I just wanted to talk really quickly about the voice of God and how it brings joy to our lives. I heard a podcast probably like a year ago, and the speaker said something that really struck me. He said, "Do you want to know why you don't have more joy in your life?" And then he said, "It's because you're not listening to and hearing the voice of God." And it really kind of hit me somewhere deep. And I thought, am I constantly listening to and hearing the voice of the Lord? And I realized that I wasn't in my daily, everyday life. And so I started just asking God. I just started asking him about little things like just little questions that I had about things that were going to happen. Like, how does someone feel about this situation? Or am I going to be on time to this appointment? Or am I going to get this thing that I'm like bidding on when I'm trying to buy something? Or is something going to make it here by this time? Just little random things I would just ask God, and I would practice hearing his voice that way. And it was surprising how much I was realizing I heard his voice just on little things that I think before I would have thought were not spiritual things, or things that God maybe didn't care about, or God didn't know about or have an answer for. I just started practicing with the little everyday things. And it was a really beautiful journey for me to just hear how God was always there with an answer. He wanted to say something to me. He loved to be a part of my everyday life, even if it didn't feel like it was spiritual life. It was just my life, and God wanted to be a part of it, and he had thoughts about it, and he always was giving me answers. And so it got to a place where it was cool. There was a house I wanted to buy, or a condo, and I felt like the Lord said I was going to get it. And then it was purchased by someone else like 3 days later, and I was really upset. And I thought, God said I was going to have it. And then it came on the market to be rented just a few days later, and I rented it, and I'm living in it now. And so I feel like God really did give me the word. Even though it wasn't always, so this is what I want to say, is that sometimes God will tell you something and he's correct, but it's not exactly what you think. But I think what happens is that when you hear a word from the Lord and you hold on to it, it really brings joy. That's what I found, like in my everyday life, when I would just hear God say something and it would happen, it was more exciting than if it would have happened just because I wanted it to. It was like, God told me this would happen, and then it did. It happened with my computer. My computer broke, and the people at the store were telling me it's not going to get fixed, nothing's going to work out with it, and I heard God say it's going to be okay. And then it was totally fine, and it brought me so much joy. So I just wanted to encourage you guys that God's voice really brings joy, and he loves to speak to his children. And then actually when my fiance got into a motorcycle accident, I heard God say really clearly he's going to be okay. And that was about a year after I had sort of just been listening to God's voice. And by that time I was like, oh, I know God's voice, and I know I can trust it. I know that when he says something, it's going to happen. And so that word brought me joy and got me through my fiance's accident in a way that I don't think anything else could have. Was just that I heard God, and he said that he was going to be okay, and I trusted him, because I had built up with God a year of hearing his voice on the little things and seeing that he was right every time, that God knew what he was talking about. So God's voice brings joy. And if you're watching this and you were like, I love that, I want to hear God's voice, but I don't know if I do, or I don't know if I can, I just want to encourage you that he loves to speak more than you even want to listen. Like, he speaks every day to every person. Just sometimes we just have to stop and see and like hear and just feel and listen, but he's really speaking, and he always wants to say something to you. And also it does take practice. I would say just start with the small things, the things that maybe don't feel like high stakes, and just the things that you maybe don't feel like you have something really invested in, so you have to hear an answer on it, like one way or the other. I think sometimes that makes it scary for me to hear God's voice, because I'm like, I really want him to say yes, but is he going to say no? So it kind of messes up the way I can hear God. But if it's something that's not a big deal or not a high stakes thing, and you're just like, oh, let's just ask God and see what he says, and doing that maybe daily or weekly really helps bring joy into your life, and I think is a beautiful practice to build up towards, like just when you really, really need to hear God, then you can trust God and you can know He's spoken to me in the past. I know what His voice sounds like, and I know when He says something, He means it, and He doesn't lie, and He's going to follow through. So that's a little way to have joy in your life, is just hearing His voice. And I also want to say, if you're not sure if it's His voice is always kind, and His voice is always good, and His voice is always patient, and His voice is always for you. His voice is always redemptive, and it's like a father. It's always just like forgiving and generous. And so if you think you're hearing His voice and it's not those things, it's not God. God is always kind. If it's rude or cutting you down or saying no to your dreams, I would say that's not God. I do think sometimes God says no because it's not the right time and He's protecting us. But if it's holding you back and like hurting you, it's probably not God. God is kind, and God is really good, and He's innocent, and He is loving, and He's so for you. So listen for that voice. Listen, and it will bring you joy. God is so good and so kind, and He loves to talk to you. Have a wonderful day, and I hope that you guys hear God's voice today, that you're encouraged to just ask Him, and that you hear Him on something small, and that it gives you a little thrill of joy today. Have a good day. Bye.